This is, okay, there it goes. This is Pastor Sean, and welcome to the new episode. I believe this is episode 3 of Bible Keys. And if you guys have been following along, what is, okay, got it. Okay, so, okay, now we're live. And my name is Pastor Sean, and this is my wife here, Ray.
Hey.
And so, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be going through the Bible verses of Ecclesiastes. And if you're new to this, what we're doing is we're going to be going in succession throughout the entire book of Ecclesiastes. The first 2 videos were on chapter 2 and about half of chapter 3. And then we are going to be going through chapter 3, verse 9, starting with the God-given task, to chapter 5, verse 1, and we're going to stop on 1. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm reading, if you guys want to follow along, I'm reading out of the New King James Version.
And I read out of the ESV, or NASB, which is most similar to the ESV.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with verse 9, if you guys want to go ahead and follow along. So it starts out with the God-given task. So what profit has the worker from that in which he labors? I have seen the God-given task with which the sons of men are to be occupied. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end. I know that nothing is better for them than to rejoice and to do good in their lives, and also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all of his labors. It is the gift of God. Verse 14, I know that whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing taken from it. God does it, that man should fear before him that which it has already been, and what is to be has already been. And God requires an account of what is past. Okay, so verse 16 starts off with injustice seems to prevail. Moreover, I saw under the sun, in the place of judgment, wickedness was there, and in the place of righteousness, iniquity was there. And I said in my heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time for every purpose and for every work, which is very similar to what we were talking about the last time we did this Bible study, that had to do with along the lines of what Ray read last time of verses 2 through 8 in chapter 3, so the beginning. So next is verse 18, I said in my heart concerning the condition of the sons of men, God tests them, that they may see that they themselves are like animals. For what happens to the sons of men also happens to the animals. One thing befalls another. As one dies, so dies the other. Surely they all have one breath. Man has no advantage over the animals. For all is vanity, which is chapter 1, verse 1. All go to one place. All are from the dust, and they will return to the dust. Who knows the spirit of the Son of Men, which goes upwards, and the spirit of the animal, which goes down to the earth? So I perceive that nothing is better than that a man should rejoice in his own works, for that is his heritage. For who can bring him to see what will happen after him? Then I returned and considered all the oppression that is done under the sun. And actually continues. So continuing to verse 1, and then Ray's going to read, and look the tears of the oppressed, but they have no comforter. On the side of their oppressors there is power, but they have no comforter. So verse 2 to chapter 5, verse 1.
So I congratulated the dead who are already dead, more than the living who are still living. But better off than both of them is the one who has never existed, who has never seen the evil activity that is done under the sun. I have seen that every labor and every skill which is done is the result of rivalry between men and his neighbor. This too is vanity, a striving after wind. The fool folds his hands and consumes his own flesh. One handful of rest is better than 2 fists full of labor and striving after the wind. Then I looked again, and vanity under the sun. There was a certain man without a dependent, having neither a son nor a brother, yet there was no end to all his labor indeed. His eyes were not satisfied with the riches, and he never asked, and for whom I am I laboring and depriving myself of pleasure? This too is vanity, and it is a grievous task. Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. For if either of them falls, the one will lift up his companion. But woe to the one who falls when there is not another to lift him up. Furthermore, if two lay down together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And if one can overpower him who is alone, two can resist him, and cord of 3 strands is not quickly torn apart. A poor yet wise lad is better than an old foolish king who no longer knows how to receive instruction, for he has come out of prison to become king, even though he was born poor in his kingdom. I have seen all the living under the sun throng to the side of the second lad who replaces him. There is no end to all the people, to all who are before them, and even the ones who will come later will be happy with him. For this too is vanity and striving after the wind. Do you want me to read one?
No, we can just stop there. Okay, so that's the entirety of chapter 4, and then we're going to go to chapter 5 next Sunday. Okay, so I saw something interesting here that Ray can then speak of after I read it, where we were both, when driving around to do errands today, we were listening to this sermon on Ecclesiastes chapter 4 and how basically just trying to get some insight from like a different perspective on this. And so there is a pretty interesting part here, and then there's another one about animals, but that a lot of people are not going to like. But so I praise the dead, which is talked about in verse 2 of chapter 4. Being without a comforter is often worse than death itself. Okay. And then he goes on to basically mirror in verse 3 there. He goes on to mirror what's talked about in Job when he it's in chapter 3 where he said that long thing that was like basically a long poem after all the God had took away all those things from him, where
he better not. I wish I didn't exist.
Yeah,
or
so
I'd never been born.
Yeah, so it says in my study Bible here that so powerfully wrong and so lonely is the suffering of the oppressed. So we're talking about like, real bad oppression. That Solomon, who with a good deal of poetic license and more to Job chapter 3, verses 3 through 10, argues that non-existence could be preferred over existence. Okay, so that's what he's talking about here, and also from what Ray was talking about in the car earlier, that Solomon, there's a possibility that he wasn't the one that wrote this book.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess you assume, because it starts off that he's of the lineage of King David, a son of King David. But I think that is a lot of, I mean, when we even talk about Christ, he's a son of David. It comes from the lineage. And my speculation is just that when we look at Solomon, this whole book kind of comes from somebody who seems to be at like the end of his days. Mm-hmm. Somebody who's like giving his last words of wisdom of the life that he's seen and is about to maybe die or is on his deathbed, kind of just giving words to young. And he talks about the foolish old king that can't learn anymore versus the young king that people want to follow. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's Solomon. I mean, I guess it's not a big deal. It's like a secondary issue, but Solomon fell away and he never repented.
Mhm.
So Solomon wouldn't have been an old man saying or speaking wisdom about God, right? Because he fell away when he married wives that were of different religions who worship idols. He fell away with them and started worshiping idols as well. So he wouldn't have been one that said, like, nothing matters, God matters, because
Mhm.
everything, I mean, he had so many idols that he worshiped instead of God. So that's just my thought on it. And maybe he was, I mean, he was a man of wisdom, though. God blessed him with wisdom. So maybe at a young age he had this kind of wisdom,
Mhm.
but he turned from it. But
Well, yeah, it says in the book of First Kings that so Solomon had a dream that he was God had basically imparted wisdom all at once
Yeah.
to him. That was the interpretation of the dream. So he basically his IQ shot up, his wisdom of discernment for things like aged rapidly, so he would be able to like he basically became a very intelligent but wise person connected at once.
Yeah.
But then it's like at the same time, like what you were talking about, right, with idols, because later on, instead of having one, you know, instead of having just one godly wife that he could have married, connected to, he ended up marrying like 300 concubines that came. It was like they came from the east or something like that, basically worshiping a demon god, and then that he allowed them to infiltrate that, and then it infiltrated his life, and then he eventually started worshiping their god. I'm not sure which one it was, but I mean, it's whatever demon god that they brought in with him, and then he started worshiping that, and then there's no indication, like what the pastor was saying in First Kings, that he ever repented and came back to. He basically fell away like all the other ones except for his dad, David, Jehu, and Micah. Micah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like he wrote the Proverbs, right? And so
yeah,
there's this wisdom that God, like, we can see that there's wisdom in that, but this seems like wisdom from somebody who's experienced it all and is at the end of their life, just kind of the way like David left the kingdom and he in his deathbed, or like how Moses, all Abraham, how at the end of their life, like you can almost see that they have, like, they pass on this wisdom in this name.
mm-hmm.
And this sounds like similar. He's passing on this wisdom of like nothing matters but God. And so I don't know that would have been Solomon, but
yeah,
speculation. I mean, and I don't know that he even called himself a preacher, but he was a wise man. The Lord blessed him.
Yeah. And also at the beginning of the Bible study, what I went over was the injustice seems to prevail, which it is talked about in verse 18 to verse 22, so right before chapter 4 starts. So, I mean, this is just his. It's his. Okay, so whoever wrote this is their interpretation of what they're seeing, which is kind of strange if you think about it. If you look at, so moreover, I saw under the sun in the place of judgment, wickedness was there. And he talks about and then gives examples of the things that he saw, which is kind of strange if Solomon did write this, because he would have been the one to be the judge in these quarrels or wickedness of murders, whatever it is that they would have went to court for in front of him. So that's, unless he's talking about seeing it just in the world and the absurdism of the world in general. So
yeah, I mean, I really relate to this, these chapters from 3 where you read that God establishes eternity in our hearts.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to like the wickedness of hearts. Like, God has given us this establishment to know Him and to know hope in heaven. But there's so much evil and wickedness that there's like this hopelessness, and that's realistic. Like I feel like myself, even like with things that are going on in the news and politics and conspiracies, all these conspiracies we like to watch, and just that sometimes I have this fear in my heart of like, God, like, could you please come? Could you just, Jesus, could you just take us to be present with you, and not in a morbid way, but the realistic perspective of life. Like there's really good things, I mean, that we've experienced, like marriage, love, like those things are really great, but wickedness is real. Like despite like our happiness just sitting here, babies are being murdered in abortion. Like there's war, people, like there's a tsunami that just happened, and people are homeless. Like there's all this wickedness that is in constant motion that we don't think of, right? Like he's talking about like there's established order. Like there's good things and then there's bad things, but I mean, it feels hopeless sometimes, and like you want to just say, okay, I'm done. Like I don't want to wake up today, you know. I don't want to go out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's to me personally, it's applied pressure to me, um, because I have a very different outlet. I mean, I connect these things personally to my job and how I'm reacting to my job.
Mm-hmm.
Of like the state that you're talking about was not. I was only thinking of that when I was working at the surgery center, because it was just getting. It's just like this. It's like this lens of like ideology I would put on, because I'm reacting to all this wickedness that has to do with the greed of the doctors, like literally the patients screaming in pain, the kids screaming as I'm trying to put away the blankets and stuff, like, or I have to at times, me and my elder coworker Tony would have to sometimes subdue the patients to the bed. You struggle with that now at your current job. It's more to me, it's applied pressure, because when my job isn't as hard and my life isn't as hard, I don't have that mindset. But when I do, it's like I look at people and I'm so angry with injustice. It's like, Jesus, you really died for like that guy. And like, it's like, I really don't.
But we are that guy at the same time. Like I look at like the church right now, right? And the church is in this, I mean, I see it as a whole in Christianity, just like there's this falseness to the movement in church right now. That's what is the deconstructionism? Is that the name of the movement? Where nothing matters but love wins. Like we've talked about this before, but no, things matter. Like at the end of this, it says we're going to be judged for like there's wickedness does exist, and we have eternity in our hearts, and it even like not necessarily work related, but as Christians in general, like there's wickedness in us, in the church. Like we have all these other idols, and we were just talking about this in the car earlier, how wicked we are and how grateful for grace in Christ there is, and how that establishes like our own wickedness, and knowing what the end result would be is humbling, because honestly, like we don't deserve anything, and we deserve the worst punishment in the world. And it's just incredible that God would even allow us to know Christ and know his peace and hope in eternity.
Yeah, it's completely of his will only, and that we should be incredibly thankful that to God that he chose us.
Right. But also have reverence and fear of him at the same time. Like not that like, oh well, like we're saved by grace, like we get to know that in this revering, fearful way of like, no, but you could destroy us because we're that wicked, and this wickedness is, but he's patient and slow to anger. Like I can't even imagine being God and looking at the world and seeing how we've been so destructive to his creation, and Christ on the cross, and like no one else could handle that but God, right?
Yeah.
Like he's God. Like he can't, like I can't even think of being, I mean, not that I could ever compare myself to God, but even just seeing things down the street tears me up. Like I couldn't even imagine being the creator of people and seeing the wickedness.
Oh yeah, I mean it's like what like really long time ago when I was going to the Calvary Church. This had to have been like 2014 or something. Pastor Robert Furrow used this example when speaking about wickedness and that all of just the evil intent and nature hidden and out, hidden in public for everybody. That he said if he took a staff and hit it in the middle of the floor while he was preaching, it wouldn't go out 1,000 feet in all directions without something being so disgusting that you're not aware of, even with the people in the church itself, even outside the building, just going maybe like 5 miles from just that church.
Yeah.
It's like so intense. It's like, God, why did you not kill this person?
Or like,
remember
the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, when Abraham keeps going to God and is like, he's saying, God, please, if there's 50 people in this city, then would you refrain from destroying it? And God says, sure. And he goes into the city and there's not 50. And he comes back and he's like, God, if there's 20 people, please don't destroy it. And God says, sure. I mean, go ahead, try to find me those 20 people. And he comes back defeated. God, if there's 10 people, please don't destroy this place. Only if there's 10. And there wasn't 10. And so despite like our own perspective of what's good and what we think good is, right? Good could be fighting for people's right to be a different sex. But is that good? Like, is that God's creation good? Like, what actually is good? Good is God's will. And so there's no such thing as good, because we compare good to who God is and what his will is.
Yeah, so I mean if you guys, I'm pretty sure everybody knows that I'm a reformed kind of guy. I'm a Calvinist Christian, I mean it's always the meme online that I see on the pages, like if you go to the Bible study and someone asks, you're not like one of those guys, are you? And then it's like it's Arthur Fleck dancing as Joker. But anyways, so like I was talking to Ray about this in the car earlier when we were getting coffee. See, there's people out there that are always seeking for God, but that is of their will, not necessarily that God put that in them to seek for him. I think that's just a natural reaction to most people, because most people believe in a quote unquote higher power. But it says in the book of Matthew that Jesus says the Father has to draw himself to this person, then bring them in. It's for that person to become one of his kids, because there's always this version of good versus evil when both of those are wicked. It's perfection that's of God, and then we have the Holy Spirit, and that's how that connects right there. So technically, literally everything is wickedness. Everything is ideology. And there's like what Ray was saying, the whole thing with what's his name, Todd something from the Toronto Blessing, and Rob Bell, and just Tony Campolo, and there's like all these pastors. I mean, like the thing is, if you're going after a church that, like Joel Osteen for it, as a very broad example, because you want to feel good about yourself, it has nothing to do with Christ. They're just using Christ as their poster boy, like to put him up on the building, or like Joyce Myers has like the Bible verse on the building, and you walk in, it has nothing to do with what is taught in the Bible. These people aren't saved. Yeah. So it's just because you're going towards these things, and like it's basically just this leftist version of biblical theology that isn't even biblical. But I mean, we're getting off topic.
Well, I would say it's more like people just don't want to be offended. Like, we don't want to be offended by being called wicked, right? Like, nobody wants to be told that they're evil or wicked, or that you have no good. And because we strive to do good, right? Like,
Yeah.
We try to be good people outside of Christ, and inside of Christ as well. We try to be good, but our nature is not good. Like even the lack of doing good is bad. So
Well, yeah, it's all filthy rags.
Yeah, in
And
comparison.
it's all everything that we ever have of a deed is like a filthy rag, and it's basically, it's a cuss word in the book of Isaiah that it's put in front of God, and he does it. It's just completely disgusting in his sight.
Right.
So
yeah.
nothing ever can get in front of the throne of God without, there has to be absolutely no blemish. It has to reflect him. And that is the only way to do this is, do you have the Holy Spirit in you? Are you genuinely saved? Are you going to run the race? It's not just a self-help program like most people treat it.
Yeah, because honestly, as you start to read scripture, and for Christians, it should be offensive. There's things in there that I'm like, holy crap, I do not like that, right? And that's because I'm accustomed to loving my neighbor despite the sin, but God hates sin, and we can't love sin if God hates sin. And so there are things that are truly offensive in there against myself and against people who don't necessarily believe in God either. And we should be offended by that, to be told that we're wicked.
Yeah. And also it does end, so it does end for the last thing that Ray read here about the how popularity passes away. Maybe we got about a couple minutes left on the show. Maybe talk about that for a little bit. So it says, a better a poor and wise youth than an old and foolish king, who be admonished no more, for he comes out of prison to be king, although he was born poor in the kingdom. I saw all the living who walked under the sun, yet they were the second youth who stands in his place. There was no end of all the people over whom he has made king. Yet those who come afterward will not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity, grasping for the wind. So talks about the popularity, something of, it's, it is cut up into three parts here: the vanity of selfish toil, the value of a friend, and then popularity. So it kind of goes in these different directions here.
Yeah.
But
I think he's just kind of establishing the order of things, things that are.
Yeah.
Instead of being 1, 2 is better. For these reasons, those are just simple facts that he's establishing, versus being a young fool, right? Or an old fool versus a young intellect is a different establishing thought there.
Yeah. There's, really, also another broad example, when you see someone who's a pastor, and even me and my friend were talking about this the other day, of that me and him know so many doctors, in the past, because I don't work in the medical field anymore, but that we knew so many doctors that were just idiots and were really wicked people, and would pretty much do whatever they wanted, or they would just have these absolutely no common sense. It's just, but then you see someone that's the janitor, for example, or someone who's just one of the, low on the administration there, who might be the wisest, most godly person at that job, even though they're making the least amount of money. It's even Jesus talks about how the kingdom like that is flipped upside down in heaven, as opposed to here, where the ones that are modest are the ones that make the most amount of money, and then it's flipped in heaven. So so we're going to go ahead and stop it there. Next week it's going to be chapter 5 verse 2.
I just want to read something from Romans. This was kind of one of those hopeless things that we read, and because at the end of the book Ecclesiastes is kind of where the hope lies, is all these things are meaningless. We're going to keep reading through life situations that are meaningless and hard or fun or whatever it is, the circumstance, but at the end of it, the only thing that matters is God and glorifying him. And just based on our wickedness, I'm just going to read Romans. It's going to be 3:23, and it says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, being justified is a gift by his grace through the redemption which is in Christ Jesus. So just the even in our wickedness and in our sin and through all the turmoil in the world and the things that are going on that we constantly battle, that there is hope in Christ for sinners and for the wickedness, and that one day we get to be with Christ, and that hope is something that I think we could use more of and be reminded of.
Yeah.
More so.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. All right. Yeah. Well, all right. Well, thank you, Ray, for doing this with me once again. We're in Bible study with the Stookies. It's a half-hour show that we do the Bible study through the book of Ecclesiastes, and then we're going to discuss after maybe the next couple months which book we're going to be doing next. It's going to be every Sunday. Try to do it between 5 and 6, but times change. Me and her both work full-time jobs, so it's kind of difficult to, do this on a regular basis, but we are going to try to do it every Sunday night. So, yeah, thanks for watching. You want to say anything else before we leave?
No, God bless.
Okay. All right. So
have a good week.
Yeah, thanks for watching, and God bless. All right.